Senator Tester, tell me a little bit more about the way things used to be. The way things used to be with Republicans demanding that more control go to the states. In fact, they were just doing that, recently talking about abortion. And yet with voting, it's now something that Donald Trump wants control of. We were just talking to Brian Chung a moment ago about Donald Trump wanting some control over intel. Now he wants control over voting across the country.
Look, I think things have changed a lot in the Republican Party. I mean, when I first got elected 25 years ago to the state legislature, Republicans and Democrats worked together to make it easier to vote. Everybody thought it was, if everybody could vote, it made democracy work better. And now it's just the opposite. We're trying to gerrymander people out so their voices aren't heard. And now mail-in ballots. I don't understand the philosophy behind this, quite honestly, unless his crystal ball shows something pretty crazy happening in 2026, because I think this impacts rural America in a big, big way, doing away with mail-in ballots. I mean, the truth is, I think I'm fairly typical. I haven't voted in a polling booth in probably 20 years because mail-in ballots are so easy. I don't have to worry about driving to the polling booth on election day. I don't have to worry about what I'm doing on election day. I can get those ballots, take the time, sort through the initiatives, sort through the candidates, and mail it off, and it's done. So to do away with this mail-in ballot really doesn't make any sense from a Republican standpoint, because we all know that most of rural America, if not all of rural America, is pretty doggone Republican right now.
Doug, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think back to early races that I ran or worked on in North Carolina, where we would do things that we call an absentee ballot chase. We would send you an absentee ballot, and we would chase the heck out of you until you returned it either in person or by the mail. These were massive programs that were instrumental for successes of multiple campaigns that I worked on. And basically, Republicans were cleaning Democrats' clocks on this collectively, not just in North Carolina, but other states as well. So I've never understood exactly what Trump's issue is here. Certainly, he wants to do some sort of damage control or, set the table for what the midterms might be. But rural voters, as the senator said, also senior voters, a lot more likely to use mail-in ballots. That is a big part of Trump's base. I think it would benefit him not to do that, especially because we saw what happened in Georgia. If you say elections are rigged enough, you might cost yourself a couple of Senate races.
Yeah, but let me ask you on that note, Doug, am I being too jaded to wonder if Donald Trump is doing this knowing full well that the midterms are not looking good, and this is a way for him to say it was rigged and to deny the outcome of this midterm election on the back of mail-in ballots?
Look, I think so. And in part, we typically would view a president who's going into the midterm elections of his second term as a lame duck. I don't think Donald Trump is lame duck at all. He's YOLO. He's doing everything he can for this last sprint, because having control of the House, especially, to some extent the Senate as well, but really having control of the House is of paramount importance for him for the following or last 2 years of his presidency.
I see you making faces, John, on these questions. Give me your thoughts.
Look, I think Doug nailed it. I think that Donald Trump is obsessed with the 2026 election. I would dare say that on any given day, despite all the other things we cover that he's doing, the 2026 election is kind of central to what he's thinking about, what he's concerned about. You see that in the effort to overturn the maps of Texas. You see that in all sorts of messaging that comes from him. And I think it's here as well. Now, as everybody's already pointed out, the states run elections. But one of the things that Republican friends of mine say is that they are very concerned about this latest initiative from the president, because what if it succeeds in Republican states, right? And that Republicans do make it harder to vote and complicate things, but more Democratic leaning states decide to stay with their existing system. There is a model here that could actually end up benefiting the Democrats. And I know it's true that it's suggested that the president would then raise new objections and new complaints about the results. But the bottom line here is that Donald Trump does not seem to want to do the one thing that might actually help him and his party be more viable in 2026. And that is to alter its policies on issues like Medicaid, cuts to hunger programs, all sorts of other things that have proven to be apparently quite unpopular.
Donald Trump was asked, or I'm sorry, Harriet Hageman was asked about this, the Wyoming representative asked about Donald Trump wanting to get a handle on states' elections. Here's what the constituent asked, and here is what the representative said in response.
Where do you stand personally on stripping Americans from those foundational tools? And if you support it, then how do you defend the charge that it's more than a policy choice and not a push for authoritarian control that undermines election integrity?
You're using the right buzzwords, but the buzzwords don't really mean anything when we're talking about a republic and we're talking about protecting the integrity of our elections. So I am well aware of the challenges and problems with mail-in balloting.
I'm going to get you on that, Senator Tester. What do you make of her response?
Well, I had a hell of a time hearing it, first of all. But secondly, I would just say that let's just talk about the elections. If we're going to have the people's voices be heard, then we ought not be changing rules in the middle of the game. We ought to be encouraging people to vote, just like the good old days when Democrats and Republicans worked together to do that, and try to get as big a voter turnout as humanly possible, because I think that best represents what a democracy is all about. As far as taking away mail-in ballots or having Congress take away the states' rights, I don't know. After watching Congress not do a hell of a lot for the last 6-7 months, they might do this, which I think would go very, very counter to what we're about as a nation.
There's another reason why Donald Trump is talking about this now, and he talked about it, the person who put it in his ear the other day. Let me play Donald Trump on his discussion with Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir Putin said something, one of the most interesting things. He said, your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting. He said mail-in voting every election. He said no country has mail-in voting. It's impossible to have mail-in voting and have honest elections. And he said that to me. It was very interesting because we talked about 2020. He said, you won that election by so much.
Sounds like Vladimir Putin knows the right buzzwords and how to get into Donald Trump's ear. Why is Donald Trump talking about Vladimir Putin telling him that 2020 was stolen? How does that help him, Doug?
I can give you the best answer I can. I don't know. That's it.
All right. So what do you think? I mean, if you're... I need more than that. I mean, I just don't understand.
Sometimes things don't make sense, Katie. Sometimes we don't follow linear logic the way that we would expect to. I don't know why he feels that this helps him. I genuinely don't. I'm baffled when he says things like that. When Donald Trump shows himself to be clear and consistent, which isn't all the time, certainly, he really benefits himself. The problem is you never know which one you're going to get.
No, you don't. John, so if this is a states issue, are you confident the states are going to be able to push back and convince the American public that the elections are free and fair? I mean, there are so many Americans out there who don't believe that 2020 was fair, believe it was stolen still because Donald Trump has been so effective in telling them his version of events. He lies about it and they believe it. Can the state elections officials convince them otherwise next time?
Well, state election officials have gotten very good at communicating about elections. This isn't the old days of, putting up the sign, vote here out in front of a polling place. In many states across the country, there are massive education campaigns. They are nonpartisan. They seek to make sure that people know when they can vote, where they can vote. And the interesting thing about this is that in many of the states, and especially when you get down to the county level, many of the people who are seeking to get that very efficient, high turnout election are elected Republicans. And I do think that at this point, Donald Trump is sending a very chaotic signal about elections. People who want to believe him or want to agree with him will do so. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a tremendous number of Americans who I think will be very excited to vote in 2026. This is a midterm election that is, lining up to be one of the most intense, maybe one of the most definitional in American history. And so I think people are going to be looking for all the avenues by which they can vote. That's mail-in, that's in person, that's early, that's on the day. And at the end of the day, all of that seems logical, I think, to most Americans. There may be some who doubt, and challenge and object, but I think the average American is going to say, yeah, I'd prefer an election where it's easy for me to vote.